When I think about trauma and emotional abuse in a Jamaican context and sort of how it plays out, I think about it being part of our infrastructure. It's part of our culture. It's part of how patriarchy exists in this culture. It's intrinsic in every single aspect of our society. Violence against women and girls on all levels, in all of the stratas of society. So it plays out in blame and shame. It plays out in denial on both parties of the victim and the perpetrator. Plays out as secrecy. It plays out as low self-esteem, depression, overeating, violence, drugs, unwanted pregnancies. It plays out in not having the legal system behind any kind of domestic or violence against women and girls, anything at all. The trauma is not addressed. It is not even, in fact, we don't really think about trauma and emotional abuse when we think about sexual violence in Jamaica. In fact, many people don't see it as sexual violence. They just see it as just part of the thing, and this is, she didn't want it, or it never, it's all a very sexist purview. When I think about the laws and the conventions, I feel that there is not really governmental accountability towards survivors, towards victims of gender-based violence, and that in itself, there is no support. Then we're on a spiral. We're on a downward spiral. If there is no way that the government is supporting in terms of creating laws, in terms of creating programs, in terms of creating actual shelters that actually get built and serve various communities. Without that, we are in a constant state of emergency. In terms of whether we're doing well or not enough, I want to talk about the fact that there are attempts by the government that I've seen on buses. I've seen big placards, and I've seen sort of statements made on TV and on the radio, and those are certainly, of course, creating awareness. And when I look at it, though, it feels as though it's a smokescreen, like it's sort of still superficial. We have the words out there, but we don't. There's no backative. There's not a lot of program or infrastructure set up. There are organizations that I feel we are really championing this and making strides in Jamaica, and these organizations are not even recognized by most of the general populace. I'm thinking about Tambourine Army. I'm thinking about We Change, Transwave, J-Flag. Thinking about the organization Raise Your Voice, which is one that I'm part of bringing here. And there are Women Inc. There are other organizations that I think they're in it. But I think about the level of funding and the level of infrastructure that is needed to actually capture this from underneath. We have to go underneath the thing, and so the more that needs to be done is about building in shelter systems and spaces, sanctuaries, and spaces where people can come to actually begin to talk about what their stories are, men to be accountable, men to begin to have apologies. These are things that we're not seeing yet. So those are the more that I see need to happen. What's needed is more spaces that address the deep emotional sovereignty and the use of powerful spiritual practices that move survivors into radical self-care. What's needed are more shelters that are organized around people who actually need safe secure spaces after being abused, sanctuaries where people can come and develop inner growth, legal advocacy, especially for queer and trans folks here. The fact that some folks go out into the streets and we make awareness, and what happens is the whistleblowers get the brunt of the hurt and more woundedness on top of this. This tells me that we have to make the change ourselves. We cannot wait for the government, and we can't wait for anybody else but make that change. So this issue of violence against women must be taken up by men. I'm calling on men because this violence against women and girls is perpetrated by men mostly. So I'm calling for men to also take it up in your conversations and look at the issue. Even if you are not someone who is a perpetrator in that way, still take it up with your woman friend and take it up with your daughter. And I think that we need more balance in order for the change to be sustained.